Hello, everybody. Today it's
Hi.
so good to have you guys here. I am excited to continue on this lesson that we started before for this episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. And today is July the 17th. So I thought this was going to be a one and done kind of a thing, that we were going to shift from what we have been looking at in terms of chapter 30 in the text, talking about the new beginning, and we will go back and complete that chapter. It's key that we complete chapter 30 and enter into chapter 31 in the text of A Course in Miracles, because inside of or chapter 31 of the text is the final text in the course, and we are being told that that the ending of the teachings of the course is not an ending, like you got it and you're done, but it's a beginning. It's a we start anew every single now moment with what we have learned. We take the information that has become the truth, that we are shifting, because A Course in Miracles just makes it really clear. There's the thought system of God and there's the thought system of the ego. And of course, the thought system of the ego is what has made this world of darkness that we operate in. And these teachings are helping us understand that little by little by little, we are cultivating, or we're on a journey where we are shifting from having been, on my charts here, having been indoctrinated in the realm of being a separate being, separate from God, which is what creates the ego. We have been indoctrinated into believing things that are not true. And we go through a process, a very specific process. The way that it was given to me was 6 phases that we all go through from conception to enlightenment. This takes lifetimes for us to achieve. However, in this lifetime, and this is the only lifetime that this has ever happened up until now. So in essence, we're the guinea pigs, but those of us who chose to incarnate, who chose to believe, not to believe, but to participate in the idea of separation, so that we could come into the world and become the light of the world. We could become, just as Jesus did, become the Christed beings, which means we wake up inside of this dream of separation. We realize, okay, we are not bodies. We are free. We're still as God created us, but we have a body. So let me use this body to be an example of what happens when we embody God consciousness. So when we allow ourselves to receive the truth of what God is, our bodies are filled with truth. Our bodies become enlightened. Our minds become enlightened because our mind is filled with truth. We then are clear. What we are is energy. What we are is the energy that appears as matter. So the matter is not what matters. The matter is what we use to bring in through what really matters. And what really matters is the truth, because only the truth sets us free. So as we move through the text, and by the way, we didn't start at chapter number 1. That's not where we started. I started chapter number 1 when I was teaching at Unity North in Atlanta, Georgia, 10 years ago. I had one of the students from that class texted me yesterday, or emailed me yesterday, and said, can you believe you started the classes at Unity 10 years ago? Where did time go? So I have been continuing, and you can find a lot of those teachings. Well, a lot of them I used to live stream into Facebook. But we are going to get back to chapter 1, and I will start at the very beginning, because I've been studying the course since 2012. 2011 is when I first picked it up. 2012 is when I went into it full time and every day doing those lessons. That has been 12 years. If my math is right, 2012, 2024, 12 years. And I have only skipped maybe 1 year, because I was teaching a different book channeled also by Jesus, A Course of Love. that is about how to really put A Course in Miracles into practice. There's another book channeled by Jesus also called The Way of Mastery. That is really for one who knows this is a game. We are all aspects of consciousness, and we are here to recognize that we are embodying the truth. We are bringers of the light. So Course in Miracles is foundational, is the basics. It explains how our mind gets conditioned. It teaches us the distinction between the two conditionings, which the Course calls two thought systems, the thought system of the ego and the thought system of God. We are creators of reality. We create what we experience. There is no other way around that. Either you're conscious of that, which means you're awake. You realize, okay, if I create my reality, let me think the thoughts that project what I prefer. If you're unconscious to that, that's when it's known as you're asleep. You're unaware of what's going on. You're unaware that your thoughts create your reality. And so you miscreate. And the Course is very clear. God doesn't punish us for whatever we create, whether we miscreate or we extend the kingdom. We will never be punished for that, because it doesn't, ultimately, it doesn't change what we are. It just gives us a different experience. It's like the analogy that I use all the time. It's like a child who puts on a Halloween costume. My kids did it all the time. Sometimes they were witches, sometimes they were angels, sometimes they were the Grim Reaper, sometimes they were a character from a movie, a Pokemon or something silly like that. And they pretended to be that character. And every Halloween, they were a different character. Every lifetime, we're a different character. Sometimes we are males, sometimes we're females, sometimes we're white, sometimes we're Black, sometimes we're rich, sometimes we're poor, sometimes we're Christian, sometimes we're Muslim. It doesn't matter what costume we put on. The one that puts on the costume is the child of God. And there's pure perfection there. You're a soul, you're a spirit. You cannot be altered at all, but you can be covered up. You can be unrecognized by the one who is pretending to be the character. While my daughter was a sweet, sweet girl, absolutely just a sweet girl through and through. That's the true essence of who she is. She would put on the witch's costume and she would go, and scare people and do things and that were out of character. Well, let me rephrase that. They were in character for the witch that she was playing, but they were not who she really was. But she had to not be who she was. She had to pretend to be this wicked witch. That's the character she was playing. So every lifetime we play a character. Course in Miracles wants us to wake up in the dream, to realize we're playing a character, to recognize that Laina is not who I am. Laina is the character that I am playing. And while I believed Laina was real, instead of my soul, my spirit being what is real, I then operated with the wrong belief system. I operated thinking I was separate and I could be attacked and I could be hurt and I could become something and I could acquire to be happy. I had to acquire to be happy. That things that I wanted were outside of me and I had to go chase and find them. Well, that put me exactly where the ego wanted me, which was in the world of learning that I had to, through fear, keep chasing and getting and achieving and becoming and never finding true lasting happiness or peace. Because every single time I acquired something, I got the marriage, or I got the proposal, wedding ring or engagement ring, or I got the house, or I got the promotion, or I got the money. It was exciting for 1 day or 2 days or maybe 3 days, or sometimes even a little longer than that. But then the worry about losing it and the concern about, can I afford it? And the concern about, can I keep the job so I can pay for all the bills and let me have all the things that I thought I needed to have to be and to become and to do Laina right. All of that is what the ego's about. That's the human journey. And it's okay to do that. Nothing wrong with having an ego and pretending to be separate. The Course tells us that we are waking up in the dream so that we can have a happy dream, meaning while you believe that you're separate, you can still be happy, but it has to be happiness that we understand that comes from within. No longer chasing, but being what we are, acknowledging the truth of who we are, reclaiming our divinity, owning it, living from it, and then shining it out so that the whole world can see that we know we are a child of God, and so is everybody else. This is where we treat others as we would like to be treated. This is where we recognize all men and women are created equal. So I shifted on July the 3rd into this lesson 186. And the title of it is Salvation of the World Depends on Me. Because we have to understand, at that time that I was inspired to do lesson 186 on July 3rd, the next day was July 4th, and that's Independence Day in the United States, where we celebrate that we are free. We're independent from the monarchy. But the average person does not understand that our founding fathers back then were doing what we're doing today. They were acknowledging all men are created equal. All of us are endowed with the same inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Course in Miracles says that we have eternal life. So, but when you're in a happy dream, you get to live a temporary life. You put on a character, the costume, whatever role you're playing is going to be temporary, but you're entitled to have a beautiful life, a wonderful life. And then that we're free. We're all made free because we have free will. So we can choose to go into bondage, or we can choose to return to freedom, to return to sovereignty. The choice is ours. But we don't know that the choice is ours until we begin to question our mind. What are we believing? Because if you're believing thoughts that enslave you, and the Course is very clear, the thoughts that we think with the ego create a prison. We are slaves. Now, the only slaves are not the physical people who have been abused and tortured and forced into doing things that they didn't want to do. That's what humans do when they listen to the ego and think that one is superior than another. But all of that is learned. That is not what we come in knowing. Little children, I watch my little grandchildren, white kids, black kids, Asian kids, it doesn't matter to him. Boys, girls, it doesn't matter to him. It's his friends. It's who he wants to play with. He has no concept of black or white, not at all. That's because he is being raised in a way that allows him to acknowledge that all of them are equal. But the majority of humanity for thousands of years has been conditioned immediately shortly after we're born into believing that we're separate from one another, that some have and some don't, some are better, some are lesser, some are monarchy, some are, the rest. So we have been conditioned for thousands of years into believing things that are absolutely not true. So in the process of believing all of these lies, we have been creating for thousands of years the idea that we have rulers, that we have kings and queens and monarchy, and somehow they have power over us. So this lesson came about to remind us what our founding fathers knew. See, I believe with every fiber of my being that our founding fathers were very courageous, and it takes a lot of courage to move through this journey. Those of you who are familiar with the chart, I call it the power of awareness, because when you become aware of where you are vibrationally, meaning what level of consciousness are you at? Are you totally, completely lost in the dream? Are you operating under the control of the ego? Then you're operating in a very low vibration. You're putting off very low light. That's what that means. Your vibration is very low because you can't feel the light. You don't really recognize it. Now, you cannot not be the light, because if you're alive, if you have a human body, it is being powered by something. You can go to any funeral home and somebody dies. God knows I've been to plenty of funerals. you see a body, but the body is not animated. So what is it that is not there? Well, the body died, but the life force, the source, the soul, the spirit is eternal. It doesn't die. It's like it just unplugs. It says, okay, I'm done with this character. And we go and we cry for the character, but the essence of that being is free. The essence of that being has just completely been taken out of the prison of the ego mind that ruled that physical character. So our founding fathers were experiencing this journey at that time of realizing, okay, I am the soul, I'm the spirit, and all of us are created equal. Now, they did not have the level of, I'm going to say, consciousness then that altered the world, because they were beginning to move into the realms of courage, or not beginning, but that's the realm that they were at. They had the courage to say to the ruling monarchy, not only are we not buying into what you're saying, but we are going to risk our lives, cross the ocean blue, and we're going to go to a whole new continent that's never been, and we're going to go there. Don't you think that that was God inspired? And they shift, they move their families, they leave everything behind that they had worked for. Now, granted, most of these people were in their 20s and 30s, young and clear, because they were so much closer to the source of who they are, clear that they weren't buying into this whole oppression of the monarchy. So they come to the United States and they create these beautiful documents that state in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, because they knew we were all endowed by God. Did they still, some of them, have slaves? They did, because at that time, those characters at that time, they did those things. They believed that was the way it was, just as some of us today believe that sitting in our phones and being on the phone for hours, blah, 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 looking at the computer somehow is okay. They didn't have computers. We have computers that distract us. They had ideas that, slaves were just part of what you did, that wealthy people had slaves. I grew up in the Dominican Republic. I grew up very well off. We had servants. We had people who worked for us. That was their job. They cleaned, they cooked, and, one lady did nothing but wash clothes. She came in, she was our washing machine. But these people were treated like family. I mean, they were family. We respected them like family, but those were the roles that they had. In India, and this recently, they abolished the caste system, but still people who grew up in that operate as if that's still real. And there are different levels, and you don't jump levels. That's absolutely not okay. So whether it was back then or the caste system in India, or what we do today, where we're enslaved because we're so focused on these machines and we don't spend time in nature or quiet to ponder, is any of this real? Our founding fathers had the courage. So they, through them coming together, created the space for the United States of America, for us to be this free country. At the time that they had the courage to do what they did, they were still operating in a world of very low consciousness of monarchies and the rest. So the servants at the bottom, and then the monarchs at the top. So at that time, they were attempting to wake people up, and it didn't take long. It didn't take long for us to, little by little, looking for safety. I'm speaking about Americans, not the founding fathers. Typical Americans just wanted to do their thing, and they were told that they had to pay taxes, and they were told that they had to do all these things. One time they had the Boston Tea Party. They were not going to be taxed on tea. They were used to drinking tea. They were after all from the UK. And they were like, no, we're not going to be paying taxes on tea, because America was founded on freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And people were happy not paying taxes. So what happens is that this country, little by little by little, very deliberately, because the ego is very deliberate. The ego in all of us which is the part that chooses to believe God is outside and I'm not going to pay attention to God. I'm God. I am in charge. I know better. Little by little by little, created a system of indoctrination. Religion was part of that system that put God outside of us. And to get to God, you had to go through the middle person, some religious person, self-appointed, somehow thinking that they knew better than the rest of us. Anybody who really knows God cannot tell anybody else that they know the way to God, and nobody else does. Anybody who really comes to feel God does nothing but share their experience so that others who are interested and ready for that can have a partner on the journey, can have somebody who can support them. It's a very lonely journey when you move down this path of undoing who you think you are. It's lonely because it's scary, because most people don't understand it. Our founding fathers, don't you think that they were pretty alone? They had, it was a handful, a couple dozen guys who were going up against monarchies of Europe, of the world. It was pretty lonely for them, but they stuck together, their courage. They found a common place of their love of God, and at that time of their fear of God. They wanted to do what they were being inspired to do. They were born to play the characters of founding fathers of America. And then after that, lots of people have been born to play characters. We had the character of Gandhi. We had the character of Martin Luther King. We've had the character of Mother Teresa. And now we have so many characters that are waking up, that have courage, and because they're ascending, because they are moving higher in consciousness. They're remembering truth. They're undoing the lies. They're going up against the establishment. And what's happening to these people, and the Course tells us, the establishment is only interested in control, in suppression, in canceling, in making sure that the truth does not arise in the consciousness of humanity. So what happened to the founding fathers? The monarchy wanted to ensure that their voices were suppressed. We don't want you to hear what these courageous people are telling you, because that's going against us. So what did the monarchy do? Well, they rallied in their troops. They brought in their money, their military, and they went to war with people who just wanted to mind their own business. Why did the crown have to come to America? If they wanted America, then they could have come here and populated it on their own. But instead, courageous beings took that risk. Leave them alone. But you know why they didn't leave them alone? Because the egos, everything that the ego does is to gain power through force, always through force, because to them, power is equated with money. So anything that they can see where we can make money, we can get resources from the land, we can sell the fruits that God gave us freely to each and every one of us. They could tax all of these things, and then they can get more money. And for them to be able to get money, they had to use power, their power and force, or the force to gain power. Because if you're pursuing life, liberty, and happiness, you're happy keeping what you worked for. You have the right to be free to keep whatever it is that is yours. Because in this lifetime, you have one chance, one character to play. And if you're going to be the character of doctor or teacher or author or painter or singer, you want to keep what you have earned. And none of us that understand that in this world of third dimension, this is third density, in this world that operates still in that money is what gives us freedom, money is what allows us to buy the things that make us happy. Money is a very important thing, and we have to work for it. That's ingrained in us. To let go of that teaching takes a lot of time. But those who achieve that, like Jesus, like Gandhi, like Buddha. Buddha's an example. He was the prince, the son of a king. He could have had a whole kingdom. He could have been rich beyond his wildest dreams. But when you begin to find God within, you walk away from that. None of that matters. I mean, I'm on my own journey of having to let go of things, because that's not what matters. What matters is my connection with God. And when you find God, you trust that everything is taken care of. You do not worry about the future. The future is not at all something that you even think about. You are focused on the here and the now, where in your connection with God, you're inspired. And then, of course, you have the courage to do whatever you're inspired to do. Founding fathers were inspired to come to America. Jesus was inspired to teach about God. At the time, 2,000 years ago, Gandhi was inspired to say no to the monarchy. I mean, if you connect the dots, you see that there are very few people who have been attempting to control the world. So Martin Luther King, what was he inspired to do? He had courage to say that all men are created equal. So the same message is being brought about by courageous people. So a question to ponder is, are we courageous? Do we exude that particular frequency? Well, that frequency to come to courage, notice where this is right here. If you look at the chakras, courage is about the heart. Is, do you love yourself enough to stand for what you deserve? But you deserve according to God, not according to ego. Courage also comes from the French word cœur, which is heart. So we have to connect with our heart. We have to open our heart. But look at where that lands in this circle. It lands right in the middle of the journey. We are taught to not love ourselves. The ego is about, no, we don't love ourselves. That's why we don't speak the truth. That's why we withhold our voice. That's why we will do whatever it takes to get whatever, makes us seen or richer, or we'll cheat, we'll lie, we'll do whatever it takes, because we don't love ourselves enough to operate in integrity. And then, of course, when you don't love yourself enough, then you move into the control phase, and you'll do anything to keep yourself safe. If you believe you have to do drugs, or you believe you have to lie and steal, or you have to sell children into slavery, if you believe that that's what's going to make you safe, you'll do it because you don't care. You don't have courage. You don't have cœur. You don't have heart. You're not connected to it. It's there. You're just not connected to it. So as we move through this journey, what do we have to do? We have to get curious about the thoughts that we're believing. Why do I do what I do? A constant curiosity about, why did I eat that? Is it conditioning? My eating has changed drastically because I used to eat what I was taught to eat. I never was curious about where animals came from, where food came from, what ingredients were in my food. But I've been very curious. I wasn't really curious about the way my body worked and what to do to keep it healthy. I just did whatever I was taught to do. Go to the regular checkups, let the doctor tell you, take this pill, take that pill, take this, exam or whatever. I did that, but I began to get curious. That's why I stopped going to a doctor once I realized, why am I going to see people who are trained into just giving me pills that are made by manufacturers who are interested in power and money? And as those things began to click in my head, that the ego operates from power and money, that means that they want the power and the money, and everybody else doesn't get it. So that's why we create haves and have-nots. That's why we create the police state, because then they scare the living, out of those who are not abiding by the rules. And as I began to get curious and I began to see those things, I began to unplug from systems that just absolutely do not resonate with my soul because they're low frequency. They're frequencies of control. And to control, you need a bully and you need a victim, because the controller is the jailer, and the people that are going to be going into the prison are all the other people who are enslaved in a consciousness that they believe they have no power. And then they have to send the money uphill. The church does that. You have no power. You got to go to the church to get to God. And then you got to pay. You got to pay your 10% or you're going to go to hell. Government started off that way. First it was pay very little. It was, I forget when they started the IRS, in like 1913, 1914, 1930, somewhere around there, 100 years ago. We pay very little, but little by little, it just keeps going up and keeps going up and keeps going up to the point that most Americans barely keep much of what they earn. Do you think that's freedom? It's not. It's enslavement. It's imprisonment. So those courageous founding fathers came back to their heart. And in their heart, they knew that they had to do what was right with God, not with monarchs. On this journey, when you begin to connect with your heart, you begin to realize that you deserve to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness the way you want it. But in the beginning, we do it the way the ego wants it because we still have conditioning. This journey right here is about unlearning what we learned. It's about watching and observing the ego, becoming aware of egoic thoughts and choosing not to believe them anymore. That is the most courageous act any one of us will do. On the outside, to stand for truth and to go against the establishment is courageous. But the real courage comes first from coming inside and overriding your own lies. Because everything that you believe with the ego, you're lying to yourself. Because that's what the ego does. The ego is nothing but lies. We have learned that that's what happens. The truth that we know is blocked by the lies that we learn. So we have to go through a process of unlearning, because as we become conditioned to believe with the ego, it always has to do with fear. And all of this blocks our energy, blocks our flow, our alignment with God. So as a little child, we're born totally, completely in alignment with God's will. We are experiencing the dream of separation, but we're here to extend the kingdom. A little baby is happy because a little baby is connected to the truth of who they are. Sure, they cry because they need food, they need diaper change, and they get cold. That's because the body is important in this realm. But as we continue to ascend, the bodies are going to change. The bodies are going to shift. They're going to change. They're going to be crystalline bodies, meaning we're going to be totally healthy. Why? Because our minds are going to be changed. We will know that we are made of light, and then that light infuses the body with well-being, with health. Soon we don't have to go outside of ourselves to experience health. We will know that it is within because we're accessing the light. So as we continue this journey of questioning, of curiosity about the lies that we've been told, we then come to the truth of God, the truth that is true, always the truth that sets us free. But we can't get to the truth until we have the courage to question the lies. Founding fathers questioned the lies. They did what they did to get here, create America. And here, 250 plus years later, we're still being conditioned to believe that we're not equal. The government is one of the primary ones that tells us that we're unequal. You look at some of these candidates, look at what's been happening for a while. So we now have to find the courage to question what we're being told, to question the truth. But it starts with, who am I? Who am I? And why am I here? And those of us who have incarnated, who chose to play the character of one who's going to awaken in this lifetime, is one who has decided we would do whatever it takes. We would go through, endure whatever suffering we had to go through, whatever life situation we had to go through, cancer, divorce, losing a home, losing a child, losing a relationship, whatever it took. We were going to use that pain and transform it, use that pain into finding our purpose, finding our truth, finding our voice. Now, this process takes however long it takes. You can't really rush it. But what's the point in delaying it? The point in delaying it is the ego wants to hold on and keep us in prison a little longer. So that's why it takes a lot of courage to say, no, I'm not going to believe. I'm not going to continue to believe that I should suffer. I'm not going to continue to believe that I'm oppressed. I'm not going to continue to be the source of my own suffering, because you begin to learn that your thoughts create your reality. There is no other way. If you believed in your sovereignty, you would never, ever, ever have any fear. You wouldn't. You wouldn't have any suffering. You wouldn't have any sadness. You wouldn't have those things that we have been taught make us human, and that's a good thing. It's not a good thing. Well, it's a good thing if you want to be on that side, but it's not a good thing if you want to be on God's side. And God says, you're free to do that, but you're also the creator of it. And if you create consciously, you're going to create from abundance, from well-being, from joy, from health, from happiness. Who would not want that? Who understands that they are the creator of their reality? But you can't get to this simple choice until you question all the things that the world has taught us to believe are somehow what we should go through. Turn us all into these victims, these martyrs. So let's continue on lesson one, or let's go through a quick review of lesson 186. The reason this came to me right before 4th of July was because salvation of the world depends on me means that if we want the whole world to be independent, we have to become independent. It starts here. We have to be the change we want to see in the world. And when we are willing to be courageous enough to do this inner work, to question these things, then we begin to see how important we are in the whole game of awakening. So it starts off in paragraph 1 by saying that here is the statement that will one day, everybody, for the founding fathers that happened back then, 250 plus years ago, for Jesus, it happened 2000 years ago. For Gandhi, it happened 150 years ago. For Martin Luther King Jr., it happened 50, 60 years ago. So one day, this statement will take all arrogance away from every mind. When you have the courage to know that salvation of the world depends on you, and you then move in service, you're in service with God, you do what basically so many have come to discover is you become an instrument of God's. You allow God to use you, meaning you don't use your own egoic thinking, but rather God inspires you into being an example of the truth of who we all are. But you can't do that for others until you recognize it fully in you. You have to become the change you want to see in the world. And you can't go out there and tell others to be loving if you're not loving. You can't go around pointing at, hey, stop judging, because that's still judging. You're still judging. So we've got to be courageous and do the work that is required. And when we come to know salvation of the world depends on me in an honest way, you feel it in your bones. You know how important you are to the plan. Then you stop being arrogant, letting the ego tell you, oh, I'm just a poor little person. I can't do much. That's ego arrogance. That's lying to yourself because you've been lied to and you've been told by the government and the church and the medical establishment that you don't know much. So we've got to change a lot of our thinking. So this is where we begin true humility. So as we begin to question, okay, what is my function? Well, how do I get to be the one that saves the world? Then it lets us know. Sentence number or paragraph number 2, the first sentence is, let us not fight our function, but you have to get curious. And to get curious means that you are now moving away. You are ascending. You are leaving the control of the ego and you're moving towards alignment with God. So you don't fight your function anymore. You begin to question everything. You go, okay, for many of us, that means you kind of have to pull out from life. Maybe you have to go into some kind of a treatment place and get off drugs or alcohol. Maybe you have to pull away and go to an ashram. Maybe you have to pull away and go to workshops and places, retreats where you pull away and you begin a process of cleansing the mind, cleansing the body, because you're going to make a U-turn. You're going to go the opposite direction than where you've been going. And then it tells us that the means are given to us by which to perfectly accomplish this. So then if you read something like this, okay, what are the means? The whole course, all the lessons are the means, explanations, exactly, follow these steps. But what happens is we enter into the study of the Course in Miracles with the ego mind first. Our ego is interpreting, oh, I like this thing, oh, I don't like that. Oh, I like that I'm the light. Oh, but I don't like that I've got to stop judging. Oh, I like that I am, eternal, but I don't want to be wrong. You can't have it both ways. It's not possible. For a while, it appears that you do. You know that you're the light, but you still keep judging and you still keep withholding your voice. And you're going to be bipolar for a while. I call this spiritual, schizophrenia. It's okay. We all go through that because you have one foot in both worlds. And until you ground yourself in the world of God, you're still leaning towards the world of the ego. Any fear, any judgment, any suffering, any sadness, any guilt, any worry, any concern, any thoughts of righteousness, all of those are signs that the ego is thinking, that you're thinking with the ego. And until we become honest, which takes courage, and acknowledge, oh, wow, I was just, that was ego. This is what God says. This is what ego says. And you begin to shift and you lift to another frequency. You are still filling the ego mind with spiritual information, but you will still be reacting as an ego that needs to be right, that believes it is small, that withholds its voice, that is in fear. So it takes a while to really ground ourselves in the humility that is necessary to recognize, you know what, I'm going to let God rule my life. And it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but it's a bad thing to let God rule your life when God is outside of you and you're afraid of it. I wasn't going to give God power over me when I was afraid of it. I had to come to create a relationship with God within. And the only way to create a relationship with God within is to see the ego as the block to that relationship. The ego is what keeps you from knowing God. The ego is a fence that we have built around ourselves and leaves the truth outside of us. But you know what's crazy about that? The ego builds this wall around us. But where is God? It's inside of us. So our mind gets conditioned to think God is outside. All the while, God is inside. But you can't come to know God because you're distracted with all those things that shine out there. The money, the glitz, the drugs, the power, the whatever is outside of that fence. And then you come in and you think you're safe in your fence, but you're not. You always come into the fence and you're guarding, you're watching, making sure nobody gets in, always on alert. That's not life. That's to be imprisoned. That's to be dead inside. So this is a journey about realizing that all the means have been given to us. Let's humble ourselves enough and read and study these teachings and applying them so that you can feel the shift. Then it goes on to tell us about the importance of listening to God's voice, because it's what will reveal to us what we need to do. That's in paragraph 4. And then in paragraph 5, it tells us there is one way and only one to be released from the imprisonment that our plan, the ego, that your plan to prove the false is true has brought to you. Everybody who justifies, and listen, I've been coaching for a very long time, 17, 18 years. And people tell me, but it's true, this hurts, but it's true, this is sad, but it's true, this is terrible, but it's true, I was hurt by so-and-so, but it is true that they're mean, and it is true I need to protect myself from them. The ego is always going to attempt to tell us that what is not true is true. It is not true that you need to be sad. It's true that you choose sadness, but it is not true that you should be sad. It is true that you choose to come to a world where people judge each other, but it is not true that you have to judge. So it requires, again, courage to begin to question what we have been taught to believe is true. So the minute that we decide, as it says in paragraph 5, sentence 2, once you accept the plan that you did not make instead, you get to begin to be moving on an ascension path. Founding fathers, they were not going to tolerate what the monarchy was saying, because inside, they came inside, they felt God inside, they knew we were equal, they knew we shouldn't be laboring like slaves and giving our money away. And it's a made-up system. We were all good when we did our thing and we traded with one another. We didn't need money. Money became a way to expedite. It's difficult to bring a cow take the cow to the neighbor's house who's giving you a little bit of ears of corn. You want to cut a piece of the cow, but you don't have the rest of the cow assigned to anybody else. So we made money as a form of exchange. And when I gather my corn and I gather my peas and I gather my potatoes, then the cow gets slaughtered and then I've got the pieces to go trade for those things. We were all fine. But when the government got in, when the monarchy got in and wanted a piece of this, why should the government have a piece of, I grew, the corn and the peas and the carrots and the potatoes, and you raised the cow? Why should they get a piece of any of this? Well, we were conditioned to believe that because they were managing the paper that we were using to exchange, that they somehow needed to get a piece of that. So this whole system of money has been made up, all to control. At first, it was to facilitate something, but when you get the ego involved, it's always going to be selfish. It's always about me. I need to be right. So it creates lies to control others. We are seeing that right now. Look at the world. The systems are crumbling because they're based on lies, and the lies come from those who seek power and money. Plain and simple. You want to find out what's really going on? Follow the money. I don't know how much clearer it has to be. Jesus told us that way, way, way back then. To look at what was happening, he turned the tables of the money changers in the temple. He was telling us, this is not right. You don't abuse people. You don't use usury. You don't use people to make money. That's not the way that God would have it be. Use money in exchange in a way that is fair, that is transparent. That's what all these systems, all this cryptocurrency, not all of it, but a lot of it is to bring transparency to the system. But that's a whole different conversation. So we are told then in paragraph number 6, that sentence 3, that you're not weak, as is the image of yourself. The image of our ego is weak, and it is willing to give up our power, or it is so weak and arrogant that it thinks it is powerful and tries to take it from somebody else. So we've got to realize that, as it says in sentence number 4, salvation of the world depends on us, so that we stop looking, trying to search and accumulate things that are crumbling like dust. Then that's where we stopped in paragraph 7. So paragraph 8 says, and so we will find our peace. We will accept the function God has given us, for all illusions rest upon the weird belief that we can make another for ourselves. What that means, that we can make another version of who God created me, that I am the costume, I am the character. So what is this saying? We will find our peace when we accept the function God gave us to experience, that we're all equal, and experience life, liberty, and happiness. That is a given that will happen. But first, we must give up this weird belief that we can make another of ourselves, that we can make an ego, that we can pretend to be what God did not say we are. We got to take the costume off. My daughter had to take the witch's costume off and be her loving self. Can you imagine if that 8-year-old that was a witch kept that costume on and pretended to be a witch for the rest of her life? That's what we have done. We pretended to be what we're not. It is time for us to have the courage. But you can't get to the courage until you go through curiosity, willingness to question every thought, willingness to question, why am I suffering? Why am I sad? And instead of, well, I'm sad because I should be sad. I just lost, my money or my friend or my spouse. The character is going to be sad, but who you are is not a character. Who you are is light and love and eternal power and presence. That one is not sad. That one is recognizing, oh, this person that has left, the body has died, their soul is free. The soul here is excited for the soul here to not be bound by a character anymore. But you can't be in joy for a dead body if you're coming from your character who sees, oh, I lost something. Well, in the world of abundance, where everything is one, there is no loss. But in the world of the ego, where we have been trained for you to have And then when it goes away, then you lose. That's how we are conditioned into striving, into trying to get more so that we are not losing. That is what we are giving up, is a world of suffering, suffering that comes from believing lies that have been told to us. And when you don't question the lies, when you're not curious about the lies, you can't get to courage to transcend the lies. That's why these steps happen in a very specific order, because that's how we ascend, like stairs. If it's 100-stair staircase, you can't get to step 100 if you don't start with step number 1. You might be able to skip 2 and 3, but you're going to have to get to 4. And you might skip 5 and 6, but you're going to have to get to 6. And eventually, when you get to 6, you're going to have to understand what 4 and 5 were about, because it all builds on one another. Nobody can skip this journey that we are on. You've got to go through the process. So it tells us, sentence number 3, paragraph 8, our self-made roles are shifting, and they seem to change from mourner to ecstatic bliss of love and loving. Yes, we are shifting and lifting to another frequency. Instead of mourning what we lost, we're moving to ecstatic bliss. Because when you recognize that everybody who leaves this world of 3D, all they're doing is returning back to the truth of who they are. What is there to be sad about being the light? Only those who operate in darkness are afraid of the light and then are sad that they left. So we're moving from mourning the crumbling of the systems that are egoic to experiencing the bliss. That's what our founding fathers did. They came to enjoy the bliss of being in a free world. And then those who were here and in fear, little by little gave up their power, gave it to the government. Little by little, we got lulled into this sleep that the government was going to take care of us. Well, our documents say that we, the people, are to run the government. It's supposed to be by the people. How many of the people have gone to serve? Very few. Those who enter into politics and become lifelong politicians are serving themselves, not we, the people. They're serving their ego that wants more power, more money. Nobody would want to be a servant to the people for more than a few years, because then they want to come back and live under the rules that they created, because supposedly when we, the people, go on to serve the people by the people, we do things to make things better. So we put the laws and then we want to come in and live under them. And everybody that contributes wants to make it better and better. You want to come in and live under those better things. But the government that is there, lifelong government, is there to serve themselves, not the people. That's why if you take a survey on any policy, any policy, doesn't matter which party it is, the decisions that are made are usually completely against what the people want, what the constituents voted those people to do. Why? Because power and money become more important than being a servant leader, than serving the people, because you know you're not going to come back in and be one of the people. You're now in an exclusive club. Same thing as a monarchy. So our founding fathers had courage to go against that. We have to have courage to go against our ego so that we can begin to see the insanity that is playing out in front of us, so that we can begin to take, as you take your own personal power back, you take the power of the country back. This is why the title is Salvation of the World Depends on Me. You can't help to bring the power back to humanity. You can't even see that humanity has lost its power until you find your own. Then sentence number 4 says, we can laugh or weep. You can weep and follow what the ego says, believe in loss, or you can laugh. Here's another place. You can believe in lack, or you can believe in abundance. You can believe in sickness, or you can believe in health. You can believe in fear or love. You can believe in greed or grace. You can believe in war or peace. We get to choose what we believe by listening to the voice for God or the voice for the ego. That's it. Very simple. Then it goes on to say, in sentence number 4, paragraph 8, we can laugh or weep and greet the day with welcome or with tears. I woke up a lot of days with tears, going through a divorce and sad and what I was losing and my son in addiction and fearing that he was going to die if he overdosed, and because some of his friends did. Or I could wake up the day with welcome. Okay, what lesson am I here to learn? Let me look at my thoughts. Are my thoughts with ego or with God? If I'm with ego, I'm going to suffer. If I'm with God, I'm going to have hope. I'm going to have courage. So I had to change my thoughts. I had to shift my thinking. I had to shift and lift to get to the truth that was true always, because the truth sets us free. Sentence 5. Our very being seems to change as we experience 1,000 shifts in mood, and our emotions raise us high indeed or dash us to the ground in hopelessness. This is not easy, to become the observer of the emotions going up and down, up and down. In addiction, because we've been taught, oh, the addicts, they have no control of what's going on. Actually, they do. They're getting their emotions up and feeling good, and then they get the high, and then when that wears out because they're using something external, then they drop, and then they feel bad, and then they go back and look for it. Most of us, well, all of us are addicts. All of us are addicted. When we operate with the ego, we're addicted to finding something to make us happy. But because our addiction is work, our addiction is money, well, it doesn't seem so bad. But if our addiction is alcohol, if our addiction is drugs, oh, well, that's bad, because we have created these labels to segregate and separate. Again, separation, that's what the ego does. But in truth, everyone that listens to the ego is addicted to being right. And if you associate high, good, happy, money with being right, you'll do whatever it takes to get that high. And then when you lose it or when it doesn't come, you're going to hit your low. So everyone operating within the ego's realm is like a yo-yo, is going to be going up and down, up and down. Or you can look at it as a pendulum. You're going to be swinging. You're going to do whatever it takes, and you're going to be swinging. And if you go all these degrees here, so you're going to crash and go all those degrees there, and because you're out of balance. The one way is to come to the middle and question, why do I need the drugs? Why do I need the money? Why do I need suffering? Why do I fear? Come into the middle way, little by little, moves you in awareness of what's happening. When you come to the middle way, you understand that you've got to follow every emotion, question the emotion. The irritation is the invitation. It is going to help you see, what thought are you having? You got shame. Why do you have shame? Because you stole something from somebody. Look at that. What beliefs? Who told you that you should, get that from somebody else to feel better? Why did you value that thing? Where did it all come from? You're going to learn. You're going to discover that every single thought that you have that activates an emotion comes from a thought, a belief that you learned. So we have to unlearn that. We've got to come over here. God, is that true? Was stealing that, $50 from my mom's purse, is that bad? God would say to you, well, you were doing the best that you could at the time. You took it because you were operating in lack. You didn't know that there were other resources. You didn't know that there was another way. And we will find the forgiveness that allows us to bring ourselves back into center. To question everything is really the beginning of courage. But the ego doesn't want you to question what it uses to imprison you in a bunch of lies. So he goes on to say in paragraph 9, is this the Son of God? Could he create such instability and call it son? He who is changeless shares his attributes with his creation. We are changeless. We are the creators of our reality. We need to have the courage to question what we have done so that we can then take a step back and go, wow, when I suffer, I'm with the ego. I'm thinking these thoughts, but when I am happy, I'm thinking with God. I was created free. Everybody's equal. So everybody that thinks with ego, oh, they're free too. But they just don't know. I may know, but they don't know. How do I become one that helps with the salvation of the world? I begin to recognize that I need to change my thoughts to change my reality. And as I begin to change, as I begin to stop reacting, as I begin to stop lying, as I begin to stop suffering, then they're going to see me and go, what is that one doing? At first, they're going to judge it and call you crazy because the ego doesn't like somebody to be different than they are. That's not okay with them. So at first, you're going to appear like an idiot, like a nut, like you're insane. Let them think that. When you no longer care about what the ego thinks, you don't care about what they think. You care about what God thinks of you. Then you recognize you're changeless. You recognize that you were created to create. And now you take responsibility for what you want to experience. Sentence 4 says, all the images his son appears to make have no effect on what he is. All the lies that you have been believing, all the naughty things that you did do not affect your innocence, your perfection, your holiness, your magnificence. It cannot affect any of those things because those are in the fabric of your beingness. That is who you are as God created you. But you can't have that experience of freedom, of realization that you are holy and perfect if you don't get curious and question the thoughts that tell you that you're a sinner, that you're not good enough, that you're a loser, that you're a fuck up, that you're worthless. You have to question. And question comes from curiosity. There's got to be another way. And curiosity, to be sustainable, requires courage. Courage to continue to question. But when we enter this journey, most people get to, I'm love and light and I've got unicorns and crystals and I'm good. And then I don't want to look at any of the dark stuff because I'm only following the light. Well, that's spiritual bypass. And it's okay. It's just part of the journey. We got to spiritualize the ego first before we finally let go of the ego. The ego has to think it knows all the things that are true. Because then comes are you walking the talk? That's a level of courage that requires a lot of practice. Are you walking the talk? You cannot undo your spiritual ego until you see where you don't walk the talk. And you can't see where you're walking the talk until you've had courage to question. So all these things feed on each other. Then he goes on to say in sentence 7, paragraph 9, they blow across his mind like windswept leaves that form a patterning an instant, break apart to group again and scamper off. Like when the trees in the fall, the leaves fall and then you've got all these piles and then the wind comes and blows them off. That's what happens. The ego has all of these images that I'm not good enough, and then we get all spiritual and we gather them together. Oh, these are the thoughts that are not true. And then comes the wind, comes some episode, an assassination attempt happens of somebody that you believe in, or a pandemic happens, and all of a sudden there's this thing that everybody gets, and it blows all those leaves, and then all the leaves of truth get scampered about, and then you got to go rake them back in and bring yourself back into alignment, into truth. So that's what happens to our mind. We get all these truths, and then some episode comes and shakes them off. Well, those big episodes are the big tests. Are you prepared to save yourself and be part of the salvation of the world? Or are you in so much fear that you can't even save yourself? One who's in fear is not saving themselves. They're drowning. They're not saving themselves. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to become the change we want to see in the world. Sentence 6 says, or like mirages seen above a desert rising from the dust. Are you realizing these are mirages? They're made up of nothing. They rise up and you believe them in the desert because you're so thirsty and you're scared and you believe that that's true, and you get there, they're not real. We're being invited to see these are all made up, all man-made, all made up to perpetuate the story that we're not as God created us. Course in Miracles is very simple. It shows us what is not true. It shows us what is true. And then it says, you decide. Which one do you want to experience? Because God gave us free will, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Life, we have eternal lives. How many lifetimes do you want to suffer? You want to keep suffering in this one? It's okay. You got a gazillion more. There's no limit to lifetimes. And because you have liberty, you have total freedom. You're the creator of your reality. Do you want to create more suffering? Do you want to create more bondage? Do you want to create paying more taxes? Do you want to create getting sick and getting pills that don't help you? Do you want to continue to, hair falling here, tickling me. Do you want to continue to believe that you got to go outside of yourself for your well-being? It's okay. God does not punish a creator for creating. God just simply waits for us to get our mind straight through courage, through curiosity, come back and align with God, and then we can continue to extend. Then we create the happy dream. Then we all live happily ever now. That is what the Course in Miracles is here to help us understand. So today I'm going to call this episode 156, and this will be on my YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. Please share what you're watching. The ego is the only one that says, oh, don't share this stuff because this is weird stuff. People are going to think you're crazy for listening to this girl. But our soul loves to share that which helps us. And so if this touches you, share it. If you're not prepared to share it, that's okay. You received it. You'll share it then by being it, by walking the talk. It all works out perfectly. So come see us next week, Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern time, for another episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. And we'll continue to go through these. We just finished paragraph 9 and there's 14 of them. So we'll see how far we get in the next one. And then eventually we'll go back to continuing in the text on chapter 30. I love you all. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Good to see you guys.